You know the name Doug Poppa?
Yes, I do. God bless Doug Poppa, an honest cop.
I was elated, of course, but then as he testified, I was somewhat concerned for him because I knew that they were probably going to crucify that man.
The top cop who put his badge on the line for justice.
One man who confronted truth and consequences.
Welcome to Truth and Consequences with Doug Poppa, episode 45 for Wednesday, April 28th, 2021. In 2015, embattled Las Vegas Justice Court Judge Melanie Andress-Tobiasson allowed her then underage daughter, a high school student, to be in the company and protection of pimps who were operating an unlicensed after-hours club that was a front for prostitution. Right now, let's revisit a few excerpts from the factual allegations contained in the formal statement of charges that were filed against Judge Melanie Andress-Tobiasson by the Nevada Commission on Judicial Discipline on August 31, 2020. A hearing is scheduled to commence on May 17th of this year, when Judge Tobiasson will have the opportunity to present her defense against all the Judicial Commission's charges that were filed against her. I am the only investigative journalist in Las Vegas that has been covering Judge Melanie Andress-Tobiasson in depth, both the pros and cons, for almost 3 years, including Judge Tobiasson's involvement in the police investigation of the unsolved 2016 murders of Sidney Land and Nehemiah Kaufman. Now, for clarity, I have substituted Tobiasson's name for respondent as it was stated in the formal statement of charges. Paragraph 1. In the early summer of 2015, Tobiasson's 16-year-old daughter began to frequent a Las Vegas business establishment named Top Notch. Top Notch appeared on the outside to be a hip-hop clothing store, but in Tobiasson's opinion, was in fact an unlicensed club which had, on a regular basis, young high school girls hanging out in the club and dancing at times on stripper poles. After learning about the club, Tobiasson staked out the establishment, where she recorded license plate numbers and vehicle makes and models of patrons. Tobiasson even trailed some of the patrons home to determine where they lived. Paragraph 2. In or about July of 2015, Tobiasson began to contact a number of Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department, hereinafter described as Metro, vice detectives, and asked them to investigate Top Notch. At times, when Metro detectives would visit her chambers to request that she authorize search warrants unrelated to Top Notch, Tobiasson would tell them that Top Notch was an unlicensed club which was running an underage prostitution ring, and that they should immediately investigate the illegal activities occurring at Top Notch. Paragraph 3. During the late summer of 2015, Tobiasson's teenage daughter began to work at Top Notch, and Tobiasson became gravely concerned that her daughter may become involved in illegal activities, including underage drinking, use of drugs, and prostitution. Despite Tobiasson's concerns, Tobiasson continued to permit her daughter to work at and/or frequent Top Notch. Paragraph 8. On September 25, 2016, a Metro detective telephoned Tobiasson to request the issuance of a telephonic search warrant to search the premises of Top Notch following a deadly shooting which occurred outside the establishment. Despite the fact that Tobiasson had been personally investigating, surveilling, and providing information to Metro regarding Top Notch, Tobiasson failed to recuse herself, evaluated the merits of the request, and then granted the issuance of the warrant. As I just read from the formal statement of charges, Judge Tobiasson became gravely concerned that her daughter may become involved in illegal activities, including underage drinking, use of drugs, and prostitution. Despite Tobiasson's concerns, Tobiasson continued to permit her daughter to work at and/or frequent Top Notch. I know that sounds repugnant, that a mother, let alone a mother who's also a sitting judge, would allow her minor daughter to be in that environment. Listen to this audio excerpt of what Judge Tobiasson told me during my May 2018 on-the-record recorded interview with her about the pimps and her daughter, who Judge Tobiasson said shielded and protected her daughter while she was inside the illegal club.
So about July of 2015, my daughter starts hanging out at a place in what we call Chinatown here in Las Vegas called Top Notch. It was a hip-hop clothing store that when I looked into it, realized it was not really a clothing store. It was a front for an unlicensed club, and also that they, on a regular basis, had young local high school girls hanging out in the club, dancing. There were stripper poles in the back of the club. There was a full bar. There were, at night, if you watched the alley behind the club, you would see the people come in, typical Mercedes, Range Rovers, Bentleys, Rolls Royce, whatever. They'd all pull in, and you'd see the people that were getting out, and you could see exactly what was going on. They would go in through the alley back door, and it was, in fact, an unlicensed club. I gathered some additional information, find out that the two men who were running this club, both are convicted pimps, and one of whom has had a case in front of me. He was a 34-year-old. I take that information to the police. I say, listen, these guys have young girls from, local high schools hanging out in here every night. And from my understanding, they're entertaining in this unlicensed club. So my daughter at some point says she's going to start working here. I tell her, I make it very clear it is not a legitimate business. And I make it very clear that she's risking a lot for our family by hanging out with these kind of people. I also am in a very precarious position because doing everything I can to keep it so that we have a relationship and I don't alienate her. So what I do is I allow her to go and work there, but I watch it. I sit, I watch while she's there. And after about 3 weeks, she says she doesn't want to go back, and I tell her, good, don't go back. But from my understanding, even after that, occasionally she would hang out there. They would go hang out in the club. It was kind of like a hookah lounge / strip club. So I continue to tell the police this. I watch the back alley. I get license plate numbers, vehicle makes and models, tell them what's going on, get the information on Marlon Brown and Red, and, express my concern repeatedly that there are 30-something-year-old pimps running this unlicensed club with all these underage girls hanging out there. I actually subsequently learned that there were cops who hung out at Top Notch at the club.
With the underage girls.
Mm-hmm. If someone was to talk to Marlon Brown, I bet he'd tell him, I actually kind of like Marlon. Marlon actually protected my daughter. Now listen, if my daughter had been 18, I guarantee he wouldn't have. But he used to tell my daughter all the time, he's like, I have mad respect for your mom. She always treated us with respect, and we were in court with her.
Who is this guy? Which guy is this? Who is that guy?
He was a pimp. He was the one who owned Top Notch, but he wouldn't let my daughter drink. He wouldn't let her party. He would let her sit back there and load the hookahs. He let her hang out there, but according to her, he kind of shielded her from the other stuff. I don't think the guy deserves any freaking awards, but I do appreciate the fact he didn't beat my daughter up and put her out on the strip.
Now, my comments. In Nevada, child endangerment is a form of child abuse or neglect where a parent or guardian leaves a child in a dangerous situation. A person may be convicted of this crime, even if no one lays a hand on the child or does not mean for the child to be harmed. Nevada's legal definition of child endangerment is when someone knowingly places a minor, defined as someone under the age of 18, in a situation that may harm the child's physical or mental well-being. It is irrelevant, according to the law, if the child sustains no injuries. All that matters is that a reasonable person would have foreseen that leaving a child in a situation that might cause the child to be physically or mentally harmed. It is a crime in Nevada for a person to contribute to a child's delinquent behavior. a person faces contributing to the delinquency charges for causing a child to be in the company of criminals. Let me repeat that. To be in the company of criminals. For causing a child to be in the company of criminals. That is exactly what Judge Tobiasson did in 2015 with her daughter. That is the law in Nevada. And Judge Tobiasson, in my opinion, broke the law in 2015 when she allowed her underage daughter to frequent and then work in an establishment that Judge Tobiasson knew, by her own admission, was an illegal business operated by pimps. She permitted her minor daughter to be in the care and protection of men she knew to be pimps, by her own words. Judge Tobiasson's admissions to me in May 2018 are not misrepresentations of the facts. The fact is, Judge Tobiasson said what she said.
But I do appreciate the fact he didn't beat my daughter up and put her out on the strip.
You just heard what Judge Tobiasson told me in May of 2018, that after allowing her minor daughter to frequent and then work in that illegal business, Top Notch, Judge Tobiasson appreciated the fact that the pimp didn't beat her underage daughter up and turn her out to work on the Las Vegas Strip as a prostitute. Now, the statute of limitations may be over to charge Judge Tobiasson with the crime. However, Judge Tobiasson's actions, in my opinion, were no less despicable and wrong. No reasonable person, a parent, I contend, would agree with Tobiasson's then actions in knowingly allowing her minor high school daughter to be in the care and protection of pimps, criminals, in an establishment she knew was involved in criminal activity. As I previously stated, Tobiasson is not only a mother, she's a sitting judge now and was so in 2015. Tobiasson is a former Clark County, Nevada Deputy District Attorney. Judge Tobiasson knew, by her legal and judiciary experience, what the law was, and she knowingly broke it and allowed her then minor daughter to be in a criminal environment where her daughter could have or may have been victimized by sex traffickers. Tobiasson's lame excuse for her poor parenting skills is that she didn't want to alienate her daughter, as you heard her say. So the best alternative for Judge Tobiasson was to knowingly jeopardize her own daughter's safety by permitting her to be in the company of pimps, sex traffickers, criminals. Keep in mind that Judge Tobiasson, by her own admission, knew that not only was her underage daughter in the company of pimps, but she admitted that other high school girls, daughters of other Las Vegas parents, were also in this illegal establishment in the company of pimps. Judge Tobiasson said she surveilled the club as the criminal activity was ongoing. And you know the one thing that she never did? She never once called the police while the criminal activity was ongoing. Yes, she did say that she told detectives later on what she was finding out, but she never filed an official report on that either. She told me that. Tobiasson is a former prosecutor. Her husband is a now retired Metro Police Sergeant. Not once, not ever, while she was watching Top Notch, did she call 911, identify herself as a judge, and ask for the area patrol supervisor to meet with her, and then inform the police that there was a presently illegal establishment operating and that there were underage girls in the club. If Tobiasson had taken action and the patrol officers responded to Top Notch, maybe there never would have been a murder and the pimps would have been shut down. We will never know, because former prosecutor and sitting judge Melanie Andress-Tobiasson sat there and watched and did nothing while criminal activity was in progress and underage girls were in danger. Earlier, when I read paragraph 8, the Judicial Commission stated that on September 25, 2016, a Metro detective telephoned Tobiasson to request the issuance of a telephonic search warrant to search the premises of Top Notch, following a deadly shooting which occurred outside the establishment. Despite the fact that Tobiasson had been personally investigating, surveilling, and providing information to Metro regarding Top Notch, Tobiasson failed to recuse herself, evaluated the merits of the request, and then granted the issuance of the warrant. Now, in my opinion, that is a valid charge. In my interview with Judge Tobiasson, she told me that after she authorized the telephonic search warrant, that she had concerns, so much so that she called the homicide sergeant back. Listen to the following audio excerpt from my interview with Judge Tobiasson.
So, September 26th of 2016, it was a Sunday, I get a search warrant call from homicide. About halfway through the search warrant, we do telephonic search warrants here. About halfway through the search warrant, they give the address and the name of the location of the homicide. That location was Top Notch Clothing Store, the place that I had started to talk to Vice about July of 2015. It's now September 2016. So Top Notch was still going strong as an after-hours club with underage girls, and lo and behold, there's a murder there. So I get off the phone, I call the the homicide sergeant back, and I explained to him that, you know, I was concerned about my name being on the search warrant because these people knew who I was, and they had kind of tried to get their hooks into my daughter. But they had, you know, most likely gotten their hooks into other girls.
So, by Judge Tobiasson's own admission, she knew that she had a conflict of interest and she should have never authorized the search warrant. I will hit on a few more things before closing out this episode. In a previous episode, I covered the lawsuit that was filed by Judge Tobiasson and her attorneys against the Judicial Commission on March 5, 2021, in United States Court for the District of Nevada. I have to question, as I have done in the past, the level of competency of Tobiasson's counsel. It's hard to figure out sometimes whether they are defending her or are Judge Tobiasson's worst enemy. I'm going to mention a few excerpts from that lawsuit, some of which are taken out of context. Tobiasson's counsel's remarks only enforce, in my opinion, what the Judicial Commission is alleging. As usual, you can refer to the screenshots in this podcast. Tobiasson's attorneys, by footnote, are commenting on the Commission's charge, quote, "Despite Tobiasson's concerns, Tobiasson continued to permit her daughter to work at and/or frequent Top Notch." Her counsel goes on to say that the Commission is disparaging the reputation of a judge, has the arrogance to comment on Tobiasson's parenting skills, and has a complete lack of empathy for a mother in a horribly unenviable situation trying to protect her child. My comment is this. Tobiasson disparaged her own reputation by her lack of parenting skills and her failure to protect her own daughter by allowing her daughter to frequent and then work at Top Notch. Tobiasson acted reasonably as a parent in this case. Tobiasson sought to protect her daughter. Nor did Tobiasson engage in any behavior that could, even under the most liberal interpretation, be construed as rising to the level of inappropriate and certainly not criminal. My comment on that one. She didn't act reasonable as a parent. How was Tobiasson protecting her daughter by allowing her to be in the lion's den? And yes, Tobiasson violated the law by allowing her daughter to be in the company of criminals. Tobiasson's attorneys finally said something I agree with. Quote, "Not to mention her duty to do everything within her ability to protect her child from sexual predators." My comment? Tobiasson failed on that one. She should never have allowed her daughter to step one foot into Top Notch. Yes, Tobiasson has parental rights as a mother, but not the right to endanger her daughter's life. That's why we have laws that protect children. But apparently Tobiasson missed that law class. Here's another one. Plaintiff has a right, and in fact a duty, to protect her child, provided she exercises that right within the bounds of criminal law. My comment? Totally agree with that one, guys. How are you protecting your child by allowing her to be in the company of pimps? That's the question. More from Tobiasson's attorneys as stated in the lawsuit. NRS 432B.130 makes it clear that a parent with whom a child lives is responsible for the child's welfare. My comment? No argument from me on this one. But did Judge Tobiasson act reasonably as a parent? I think not. Another excerpt. The tenor of the allegations notwithstanding, plaintiff's anti-sex trafficking position as a mother and a citizen is not inconsistent with her duties as a judge. My comment? When did Judge Tobiasson get her anti-sex trafficking position as a mother and a citizen? After she permitted her daughter to be in the custody of pimps? I'm glad Judge Tobiasson's attorneys raised this one in the lawsuit. Nevada's custody and child support laws are founded upon a principle that the parent must always act in the best interest of their child. As a parent, plaintiff had a legal duty and obligation to, among other things, protect her child from harm and to provide safety, supervision, and control. My comment? Did Judge Tobiasson know that in 2015 when she allowed her minor daughter to be in the company of criminals? Did Judge Tobiasson's irresponsible and criminal conduct in allowing her minor daughter to frequent, then work in an unlicensed after-hours club that Tobiasson knew by her own admission was operated by pimps, criminals, have any negative impact on her daughter? Well, according to what Judge Tobiasson told me during my interview with her in May 2018, it most certainly did. This is what is contained in paragraph 38 of Tobiasson's lawsuit against the Judicial Commission. In December 2015, unrelated to her prior job at Top Notch, plaintiff's daughter was directed to an address where someone known as Sugar Shane was purportedly living. Plaintiff's minor daughter went to this address for the purpose of obtaining an identification. At that interaction, it was made clear to plaintiff's daughter that Sugar Shane was a pimp who intended to traffic plaintiff's daughter against her will and force her to work as a prostitute for him, indicating that he was going to teach her how to work the strip and make money for him. My comment: that first sentence is in direct conflict to what Tobiasson told me. That sentence says, quote, unrelated to our prior job at Top Notch. Sarah Tobiasson, Judge Tobiasson's daughter, was sent to Shane Valentine's house because she was sent there by the people at Top Notch, or by people she had met at Top Notch, according to what Judge Tobiasson told me in my interview with her. Listen to this audio excerpt of Judge Tobiasson talking about how Shane Valentine attempted to recruit her daughter into prostitution and how she managed to go to his residence.
December 2015, my daughter comes to me, says to me that she met a guy the night before. She went to his house, apparently was sent to him by the people at Top Notch to get a fake ID, or at least by people she had met at Top Notch. That person was Shane Valentine. Now, she had met him, but she'd not really had much interaction with him. On this particular night, she goes over there to get a fake ID, and he starts, talking the talk, and I just kind of given her a heads up about what that would sound like and what that would look like. And he starts talking the talk and tells her that he's going to teach her that she was born with a silver spoon in her mouth, and he was going to teach her how to work the strip, and she was going to make money for him. And she said, no, that's not my thing. I'm not doing that.
One could make a good argument that Sarah Tobiasson's attempted victimization by another pimp, Shane Valentine, was directly related to Judge Tobiasson permitting her minor daughter to be in the company of pimps, sex traffickers, criminals in 2015, while she was at the unlicensed after-hours club Top Notch, because according to Judge Tobiasson, Sarah was sent there by somebody from Top Notch. I have to ask this question that I have no answer for. Sarah Tobiasson was a student at Bishop Gorman High School in Las Vegas in 2015, which is the only Catholic high school in Las Vegas. What are they teaching at Bishop Gorman High School that a female high school student would even want to hang out, let alone work in an illegal business operated by pimps? It's very bizarre, but no less bizarre than when Judge Tobiasson told me that Sarah's best friend Allie, the daughter of another Las Vegas Metro police officer, was recruited into prostitution by Shane Valentine while she was still a student at guess where? Bishop Gorman High School. Is there someone inside these high schools in Las Vegas that are targeting certain females to be victimized by pimps? Because according to a police source, underage prostitution is a problem also in Centennial Hills and Arborview High Schools in Las Vegas. What is stranger than that is that I haven't seen any arrests by the Las Vegas Metro Police involving any child prostitution rings running out of high schools. Thanks for listening.
10 minutes without